Hey, it's Shiv.
And it's Dave.
And we're back with the All of You podcast. This episode is inspired by events from last weekend. We went to my parents' house.
Yes.
And one might call that the journey home because I was journeying home. And it got me thinking about how healing is actually a journey home into ourselves. So we spent the night at my parents' house because we had to be up in LA really early on Sunday morning. And when you and I were laying in bed, we could hear my parents laughing. It was like 11 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were laughing hysterically.
Yeah.
Like loud.
It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was so cool. It was so cool because, well, I didn't grow up in a house with my parents. And so I never heard my parents laughing. So, listening to your parents who have been married 40 years
I think it's like a little less than that, maybe.
I mean, your dad's gonna laugh hysterically wherever he goes. That's pretty accurate. But it was just so beautiful to hear them laughing the way that they were.
Yeah.
And, for me, it was cool.
Yeah, and I remember you rolled over and said to me, like, what do you like?
I think I just commented on how cool that was.
Yeah, and it clicked in that moment how much I kind of took for granted that was actually like almost every single night growing up, I could hear my parents laughing. I think one of my core childhood memories, because it was almost every night, my parents laughing so hard that the three kids would get out of bed, run to their room to figure out what happened. And it was something utterly ridiculous every single night. And the reason this kind of inspired me for this conversation was we were sleeping there in my childhood home, and I just had this like energy come over me of the feeling of safety that I had in my childhood house and what that felt like. And I just was so immensely grateful for how I grew up in my childhood and my parents. And the reason I bring this up is we talk so much about trauma, and so much of this podcast is me talking about the traumas that I've gone through and the ways that it's impacted me. And one part of my journey that I haven't talked about was before I could get to the point of unpacking childhood trauma, there was this really big hurdle for me. And it was like every book I read on self-help, I didn't think applied to me because my childhood was so good. Like amazing, loving parents that I could tell you at least 10 times different people have asked me, will your parents adopt me? My parents did, quote unquote, adopt in multiple people that moved into our house.
They still are.
They still are. I couldn't have gotten more lucky in the parents department.
Yeah.
And I also grew up with a really big, amazing extended family that was super supportive. So when I was kind of starting this healing journey, which was kicked off by realizing that I had learned that you choose someone whose wounds are to the same level yours are. And you were very clearly wounded. And so I had to go, well, why did I choose Dave? Like there has to be something going on inside of me that I'm missing here.
Mm-hmm.
And so what the block was in starting that process, why reading so many self-help books never got me anywhere, is I wasn't willing to admit that were parts of my childhood that were actually hard and did hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm bringing this up today is I think that's a really common block that people have, is painting it as like, well, it wasn't that bad. I think that's a really common thing people will say. I don't need to unpack my childhood. It wasn't that bad. Or for me, I was like, why do I need to unpack my childhood? It was amazing. The lesson here is there is capital T trauma, really big life altering events, losing my brother, your dad leaving, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also, I call it lowercase t trauma. And that is as a child, anything that happens to you that you is too overwhelming for you as a child. And that can be all sorts of small interactions that happen to us and they kind of bake on top of each other. And they're these micro experiences. So a lot of what I've had to unpack are not these like big things from my childhood that went wrong. It's really these small things that happened that as a child, seeing them through my little kid lens, not my adult lens, I couldn't see clearly because I had the mind of a child. And so I put my little spin on it as little Shiv, and it hurt me, even if the person who said something to me that hurt me didn't intend it to. And so there's these little mini wounds that are all over. And that's the stuff that I have to heal. And I want to bring this up because we all have these little wounds where the triggers are coming out of. And if we aren't willing to open our minds to the perspective that we were hurt when we were little, even if our childhoods were great and our families were wonderful, then we can't start the healing process. And from there, I kind of wanted to talk about what that journey home looks like.
Yeah, the journey home. It's not about healing the wound so the wound was never created or the wound was never there. It's about understanding yourself now with those.
Your pain gives you a unique perspective, and that unique perspective can be a gift.
It
It is a
absolutely
gift.
is. Yeah.
If you choose to see it that way. I think that comes up to choice and perspective, and those are things we have control over. So you can let the bad things that happen to you hold you back, or you can use them to propel you forward. And that all really comes down to choice and how you want to see things.
Yeah, it's mindset. Because like I even hate the thought of, somebody listening to this and who has gone through, just the worst of things on this planet. And that person who's gone through something like that, I wouldn't want to sit there and tell them that that's going to make you stronger.
Yeah, I actually fully agree with that because I remember so many people saying that to me after I lost my brother, like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I wanted to fight those people.
Yeah, you don't want to
Like,
you don't want
it's
to
like
hear
the
that.
worst thing. No one wants to hear that. So I do
Yeah.
agree with that. I would never, like, someone who's hurting and in pain, it's the wrong thing to say to them.
Like it sucks to have to caveat, but I also have so much empathy for the people that have gone through the worst of things in this world that I wouldn't want to say your pain is going to make you stronger, even though whatever you go through in life can make you stronger. When you are hurt and in that stage where you're hurt, it's not the time to see that this is going to make me stronger. There's this acceptance period of the pain. And so you have to accept it first. And sometimes people don't ever even get to that. They don't ever finish that stage one. They don't ever fully accept it.
Yeah, before you can alchemize the pain into something good, you have to actually accept the pain and feel it inside of you. And it's not an overnight process for any of that.
Yeah, and I thought I had accepted my pain. I would have told you I had. But the truth is, until I could validate my pain and validate how hurtful it was, I thought rejecting my pain was accepting it. So I thought that I could sit there and explain it and have it not feel it. I thought that was accepting it. Accepting it was actually feeling it and go and allowing my body to feel the feelings of the pain that was caused.
So I don't want to speak for you. Originally, your mindset was, yeah, it happened, but it wasn't that bad. It didn't really hurt me. I'm fine. And other people had it worse,
Yep.
was like the original way you looked at it. You kind of rejected it.
Yep.
And then the difference now is going, hey, that was really painful. That did hurt me. That did impact me. I'm sad. And I got wounded when that happened. That's the difference, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. Because when you can do that and when you can really see how it did affect you, like really, and you know it, your intuition knows it, it remembers.
Yeah, but not everyone's connected to their intuition.
Yes.
That's the process of coming home.
Yes. It's that opening up your brain cells. It literally feels like you're allowing a safe place inside your body and your brain to let it slowly emerge. And it's not an overnight thing. It's not gonna all of a sudden hit you like it feels like it hits you like a ton of bricks, but it might just be 1% of the pain that your body's allowing you to feel because you might not be able to actually process that amount of pain. The pain of the loss that you've experienced is so painful. How can you fully feel it? Like it just feels like it would kill you, stop you in your tracks and not be able to even move forward. So the way the human body allows is like little bits and pieces at a time, but you have to create that safety and relationship with yourself.
Yeah. Fascinating that the body knows what it can and cannot handle. And it knows that you have to actually create safety in order to handle more of the pain when it needs to be bottled versus when it's safe enough to release it. It's such a fascinating concept to me that we intrinsically know that.
Yeah, and like a lot of this for me has been so many books of reading it and hearing how it's done and still not believing it. And then when I started to experience it, I was like, "Oh, now I know it." It's like you could watch a bunch of YouTube videos on how to do something, and then when you do it with your own hands, you know it and your body remembers it. So now I can explain the process because I can literally feel it happening to me when it's happening. I kind of always knew I was wounded, but your story on this theme is more. It's really hard to validate that you would have any trauma. Like how could you even talk about trauma
It
when
actually
you
felt wrong to
yeah,
do so for a long time.
but we go to school and we have school teachers and we have peers that are abusive at the age of 13 and boys in the gosh, I was such a rough kid to I probably have to deal with some of the shame I feel from just the way I treated girls in junior high. Obviously wish that we were more aware in the early 2000s or late 90s, but at that time, I was listening to Dr. Dre and like I was getting my information from Snoop Dogg. And not that they're bad people. They're probably great now. They're probably a lot
Is Snoop
more.
lying now?
Oh yeah. Um, like it was a different time but that stuff was abusive. I cannot deny that the things that I said at junior high dances, I would just be disgusted by. Do you feel that way too? Like the things that were said to you or
Oh, I mean, yeah, for sure. Junior high boys said all sorts of vulgar, nasty things and were genuinely unkind. Like that was a thing. But I think the perspective I have on it is typically the ones that were doing that were the ones that were in pain. They were the
yeah.
kids who didn't have the best home lives. Therefore, they carried pain with them to school and they like pain snowballs. Like if a child is in pain, they take it out on the other kids at school. And it's all, they don't know that they're doing this. They know not what they do, right? It's all
Yeah.
subconsciously. But if a child isn't getting their needs met at home, they act out at school. So I'm not like, I don't hold any anger towards what junior high boys said to me, but like
It did affect you,
but it
though.
affects you 100%. I can
Yeah.
recall things that were said or ways they were inappropriate and different behaviors that for sure negatively impacted me. That, but where I go to with that is, but I'm an adult now.
Yeah.
And now it's my responsibility to fix that. But
And that's like this whole thing too of like so in this journey back home to an understanding of yourself, an acceptance of all your trauma and the healing journey, you can't be angry.
well, I would actually kind of stop you there because I think you can be angry if you need to be.
Yes.
Like if that is the first emotion that comes up when you think back on something that happened to you,
Yeah.
good.
Mhm.
Because that means a feeling came up. And if anger is the first one, okay, perfect. Because now we're on the road to digging deeper because we got
Mhm.
anger, which is like always for me, that's the first one that pops up on the surface. But below anger, there's hurt, there's pain, there's, all these other feelings
Yeah.
beneath it. So it's kind of time to start digging.
You have something brewing in my brain really good right now that's like probably a rant, but if the journey back home is a journey, it is exactly that. It's a journey that we go on and it travels through the forest and through across the seas and through all this, right? Each stage of that journey it doesn't feel right. Like to sit there in anger about the trauma that you faced might not feel like what you want where you want to be. To go through the process of accepting what happened to you and really forgiving the person that maybe did something to you doesn't feel right or accurate because they did something really bad. Or to validate your trauma when you had such a good childhood doesn't feel accurate because why would you do that? It doesn't make so each stage, the forest, the desert, the sea that you have to go through to get to this beautiful island of awakening or healing or healed island to get to this beautiful place of understanding, you have to go through each stage, but each stage is so uncomfortable. It's so foreign. It doesn't feel right. So what we do is in our minds, we want to just go to the island where, yeah, we're all good. I'm all good with everything that happened to me. But you have to go through that process. You're not ever going to get to that island truly. So you're just faking it. You're faking it till you make it, but you're not really there unless you go through the forest and the desert and then the seas. And so, that forest is maybe anger, frustration, fear, pure sadness and hurt. And then the desert is the acceptance and the understanding of really how it affected you and validating all that. It's the validation stage. And then the C's is really the forgiveness. A great example, and I hope, she wouldn't mind me sharing it, is my mom. I did go through that. I had to go through this period of really being upset with my childhood. And that was painful for her because I probably wasn't kind to her in ways that I wish I would have been and more gracious. And then I got to this period of accepting it all. And then I got to this through these seas through that third stage of really honoring her and forgiving her. And then when I finally felt like I had come to this third level of understanding of it all, was being able to go, wow, she did so many good things for me. Like, I would not be this human in the slightest without her. This gratitude I have for my mom these days is beyond because it could have been 1,000 times worse. And she struggled to provide the home that she provided, not because of her own doing, but because, we're talking in the 80s and 90s, in the early 90s, a single mom. Women were 30 years removed from, like,
We couldn't even buy a house without a man on the title.
yeah,
Yeah.
till what year? Like, so it's it was not. She had to work some jobs as a secretary, and I can't imagine the abuse in the workplace that she faced, or talk about the wage gap between men and women at that time. So, as a single mom, I'm so grateful that I even am standing here now with the life that I have and the example that I had from her from being so hardworking. So, there is just this journey that you go through that's very staged, but each stage isn't comfortable. So entering that first stage is the hardest part of like, I'm going to go here where I'm going to allow my body to get angry at my childhood. I'm going to allow my body to get upset at the things that happened to me. And that's not where you want to live.
Mm-mm.
You don't want to live in this, because that is weak minded kind of, to just be angry and bitter and blame mode. So it's
But it
just this
is just the stage of
process.
releasing all that stored negative energy and emotion and kind of getting it, working through it to get it out of you almost.
Yeah. And it's like a lot of people, I think, either never go into even stage one because they don't want to blame anyone and they don't want to be bitter. So they skip all the steps and they're just accepting of their life, but they're not healed from it. So that pain is just buried. And so going to state, allowing yourself to go, I'm going to blame everyone for a minute, just just a minute, just allow yourself to go there, but don't stay there. Cause if you stay there, that's the worst vibration. That's the,
Bitterness
yeah,
and
no,
anger and
no. But I was there for a minute, but I knew that I didn't want to stay there.
Yeah. I want to actually circle really far back. Earlier in this conversation, you talked a little bit of how it's really hard for us in what we're saying on this podcast because we're not sure how different people will interpret it. And I want to like get a little bit deeper into that concept because I personally find it really fascinating. And that is each individual person goes through life having all these unique experiences. And each experience you have paints the lens of how you see the world. And not only is it your experiences, but it could be the community you grow up in, it can be the neighborhood, the part of town, the schools you go to, the church that you attend. It's there's all these social influences that impact the lens that you see things through. And if if there's two identical twins and one is born in Southern California and the other one is born in the slums of India, they're going to have really vastly different world perspectives than each other because how they were raised, their lens was conditioned very differently. And so I actually see the journey home as unpacking all of the different filters societally, from my church, from my schooling, things that happened, all these different experiences and societal influences. I now am either unpacking or questioning them. And that was really scary for me at first, especially questioning my faith upbringing and going, what do I really believe? What feels true to me? And I think part of the journey home is being able to open your mind to your experiences and your worldviews, maybe not being right. And
Oh,
I felt really self-conscious and insecure when I first began doing that because I shattered my own reality and went, what do I actually believe without all the influences around me telling me what to believe? And I think that is how I would define a lot of the journey home is and journey back into myself is unpacking what I was told to think and believe and unpacking the experiences that happened to me that I saw through the lens of a child that I think I can see differently as an adult and now forming a different perspective.
Mhm.
And I think what this practice, where I'm currently at with it, that I really like is I've arrived at this place of everyone's perspectives are really just formed, like I said, from their experiences and their influences. And I think so many people spend time, whether it's fighting that their religion, the religious view is correct, or their political view is correct, or whatever views they feel safest holding is correct. We fight it because we're like, my view needs to be correct for me to feel comfortable and safe. And everyone on either side of the aisle or religious preference is doing that. And really, all it is like, is anyone really right or is anyone really wrong? Or are we just fighting for the perspectives that we're grasping because it's what it makes us feel safe? And I kind of came to this place where I can just accept anyone for what their views are because I can go, something happened to you that made you feel that way. And if their views are harmful, which can be the case. Like, years ago, I read this book, Tea with the Hezbollah, and it's this like terrorist organization, but it really speaks to like, but they're actually just really normal human people that you could laugh at the same jokes with, right? Like we're all just human, and the difference is people have been wounded in ways, and that trauma shows up, and it creates their perspective that is harmful. But anyone can actually go through a healing process and unpack the negative lenses and influences in their lives.
Yeah, well, like anyone who studies like cults, what you think and the perspective you have in life, it shapes you. Your experience shapes who you are at the core. We're just a filter. The human experience is like a sponge. You're literally just collecting these experiences. So it's like evolution, and we are not a firm identity. We are an identity that is built off. Siobhan Roy is not Siobhan Roy without the experiences that you've had. You if you grew up in a different country with different experiences, you would be an unrecognizable human.
Mhm.
There is a part of your genetics that is your hard-coded genetics, and then but most of who you become in your identity is this pliable molded clay that's really built off the experiences that you travel through. So the belief that we are these hard coded, I am who I am because it's core me is really not true. I am who I am because of all these experiences. Except there is a core me deep down. And I've allowed all these experiences to collect onto me. And then what's really the best thing is actually collecting them. But as your identity starts to shape in the world, we have this belief that these experiences shape us and mold us into these people. But if we can deconstruct some of these negative experiences and let them go, then we can become the beautiful, authentic selves that we're supposed to be. And that's the journey back home.
Yeah. So my hypothesis on this, and I'm okay if I'm wrong, but
You're an armchair psychologist.
yes. My hypothesis is if Siobhan Roy that grew up in Southern California and doppelganger Siobhan Roy who grew up in India both went on the journey home, unpacking all of the influences and experiences that we had separately, right? Two different people, that we would, at the end of the journey, arrive and be a very similar person.
Oh, but let me take you one step
Oh,
deeper.
take me.
Dave Martinell who grew up in San Diego and Siobhan Roy, who grew up in India, would also come to this similar being.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like we are all human beings at our core without all the experiences are much more similar than we believe.
No.
Yes. Yes, there is a difference in our hair color and our eye color and the shapes of our bodies, but the ego is what wants to believe the difference. And the journey
Ah,
back home is to
okay.
release the ego and really no longer have the craving to be more than human or better than the rest of the humans, but to be a part of humanity. Human nature is to be in community with each other and and love and care for each other. We like to do that. We get the
Mhm.
most pleasure and we're the most happy when we're helping others.
Mhm.
But yet we start from young kids trying to be better than everyone else. And that actually is what's leading us to our misery. So we're collecting, as we begin, we collect these experiences and we believe that these experiences make us better than somebody else, or our natural abilities make us better than somebody else. So our whole lives we're trying to separate ourselves from the pack, when really what makes us the most happy is being a part of the pack. And understanding, yes, we are different, recognizing those differences and celebrating them, the small differences. As humans, we are like 99. So, no, Siobhan Roy from India and Dave Martinell wouldn't become exactly the same person, but 99% of what we desire, we have in common. And that 1% of difference is just kind of cool. It's like how I appreciate you. Like, oh, you
Mhm.
like this, you laugh at this, you have these things that you know how to do that I don't know how to do. But ultimately, we have 10 toes. Well, I have 9.5, but we have 10 toes, 10 fingers. And, we are much more similar than we like to admit, because our craving is actually to be better than the rest. And that, I just think that's where the ego kills us, kills our happiness and our joy. That was a wild
So
one.
that was, yeah, for anyone listening to this, we got real philosophical, but I had a lot of fun doing it. And so I think what we're actually arriving at here is, maybe after all, the journey home is really just the journey to getting rid of our ego.
Yeah. There is that third stage. So, like, the first stage is kind of understanding those experiences and maybe, being angry at some of them. And then that second stage is like accepting all of it. But that third stage is being grateful for the differences and being able to appreciate the differences without the insecurity. So,
Mhm.
like, when I can go to a concert and watch a guy sing with a beautiful voice and appreciate that fully without the insecurity that I can't sing, that's when I can most enjoy the human experience as a collective, because I'm no longer comparing myself to the guy on stage. I'm appreciating him as a part of me, as a part of my experience, and as a part of he's blessing me with his gifts, and maybe I can bless some people with my gifts.
What a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's really hard to do. It's
Mhm.
really hard to go to, somebody that's so gifted and not have any mirrored insecurity inside ourselves.
But also, it's such a cool place to be.
It's the best.
Yeah, it's really just being in a full abundance mindset, I think. It's that what someone else has doesn't say anything about me. I have enough good in me that looks different,
Yeah.
and, like, I can celebrate others without it saying anything about me. And maybe that's not fully abundance mindset, but I think it's a little bit applicable.
It's a secure mindset, it's a safe mindset, and it's an understanding that you are here to give, but you're also here to enjoy and receive. And so people who are gifted, talented musicians really bless us with their art and their gift. And people who are gifted painters, they bless us. And people who talk, hopefully, bless people too. Because that's all I can do. But that's use your gift. Like I talk. I've always
And you
talked.
do a lot of it.
Yeah, and my brain thinks of analogies and simplifies things and teaches well. So that's what I am supposed to do. Now, would I want somebody else who maybe doesn't know how to do that be for them to be jealous of me? No. Do I think that people are way better than me at what I do? 100%. I am just called to still do me and still do the thing that I'm supposed to do. And I'm sure I'll discover more gifts as I go. But the insecurity actually keeps me from it, because let's say I'm jealous and I'm insecure. So we go to a concert and somebody's playing this beautiful song, and I use music because I crave that so badly. I would love to be a gifted musician, and very, unless I have a lot of time in retirement, like it's not a natural ability for me. It's the furthest for me. So I use that because it's a good example for me. But if we went to a concert and somebody was really gifted and I went home and started like plugging away trying to learn guitar and or piano and learn how to sing, like it'd be kind of a waste of my time.
Trying to be someone else is a waste of your time.
Yeah, unless I really like feel like I'm feeling it, and I can push through and get there, which I probably could to some degree. But just using your gifts and guiding by your intuition, like, what do I know myself to be good at, and what do I enjoy doing? If I really enjoy music at some point, like, I'll pursue that. I'm not saying I won't ever, but doing it out of the insecurity is not the place for it to come from.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that also speaks to the whole journey home, in that if you're trying to get good at something because you see someone else doing it and you want to be like them, you're not being the best you can be. You're actually going further from home. So it's an interesting concept that your jealousy really can actually take you farther away from yourself. And that's really fundamentally why we heal the wound where the jealousy is coming from, so you don't feel the jealousy, and then you can actually get closer to realizing who you are, because you're not focused outward on other people, you're focused inward on yourself.
Yeah, and knowing to pick and choose that is huge, because like inspiration, like you could get so inspired to do something and try it, and that's great. But then, so knowing, are you inspired or are you jealous and insecure? Those are two different emotions, like very different.
I think for me, it's really easy to tell because they feel different in my body. They literally vibrate at different frequencies. Inspired and jealous feel drastically different in my body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like if you're a comedian and you want to be a comedian and you hear somebody else doing something and you're like, oh, I can use that and not copy them, but I like that angle. I like that comedic theory, that concept that I can use in my bits. That's inspiration. That's now somebody who's great at something is pulling you up to be greater at the craft that you're doing. And that's fantastic. That's not jealousy. We all do that. We're all inspired by each other and are now, honing our craft to try to be the best version of ourselves and use our gifts. But when it's something that isn't you, it's not a reflection of you. That person's mirroring something that you're jealous of, that you don't have that gift. Don't give in to that. Appreciate and have gratitude that that's their gift, and go, you know what, that's not me. That like having that self-awareness allows you to release those jealous feelings and go, that's not my calling. That's not me. That's them. And let me just appreciate them and appreciate that painting or that art. Because not being able to appreciate art because you're jealous, oh, what a sad, like, what that is That is so sad. Gratitude and appreciation of other people's arts and gifts are just life-giving. That's what, and then you get more inspired, and then maybe I will start singing out in song. But I think that's like the journey back home is the full circle to like how we started, gratitude. All hero stories is like this separation, the alchemist, like this leaving what you know and kind of going through this journey of self-discovery and understanding, and having to travel through the seven seas or whatever to come to a place of you had it the whole time,
Mhm.
and this gratitude for what you had. And that's the hero journey. And so anyone who hasn't gone on that journey, I really encourage you to go on it. And you don't have to go to 40 countries to do it. If you don't have you can do it in your living room through meditation. You can do it through classes, through coaching, through mentorship. The journey is not outward. The journey
It's
is
inward.
inward.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's where you really come home to yourself, is inward. Things outside of you can spark it, but all that inner work is
All
inside.
the answers are inside you.
Yeah, I think that the journey is self-acceptance, really. Once you accept yourself fully and all the ranges of experiences that you have, and you're no longer hiding in shame of them or suppressing any of them to dark areas inside of yourself, and you can allow your brain to recall any experience that you had, and have grace, and it's not going to make you feel a certain way about yourself. That's when you know that you've accepted all of it. Because when you have thoughts in your mind or memories that are certain experiences that make you cringe and you can't accept, you're pushing them away. And of course, the trauma will make you cringe. It's hard, but once you get angry, and then once you grieve it and accept it, and then once you have grace on yourself for your journey, your whole journey, every experience that you've had in your life, your entire movie, you can watch without judgment on yourself. That's the arrival of a really healthy place, I think, for everyone.
Well, and that's actually a really interesting part of all of this is your body will block out chapters by suppressing memories when it knows you're not at a place where you can emotionally handle them. So if you have a lot of blocks of not remembering things from your childhood, it's because your body knows it's not safe for you to remember because you can't handle it, which is a really great thing that our body does to keep us safe. But also, when we get to a place where we're ready to remember things, and you can tell your body that it's safe and that it's okay for those memories to come out, that's when they start coming
Yeah.
out, and you're no longer repressing them. And that's also part of the journey.
Yeah, and then you're fully accepting yourself, and it's a tension, just like a flower blooming, or like anything in life. It's this tension, or growing pains as you're growing up. It's your mind is going to give you the memories, and then it's going to kind of test how you handle if you have judgment on yourself. And so it's this slow unearthing in your heart of accepting yourself. And it's not one time. It's a fight with your own internal self, really, to fully be able to accept it all. I don't think I'm there yet. I'm not speaking from a
Yeah,
place
I'm
like
not
I'm
either.
there.
Yeah.
I'm still working through things, but I want to be there. That's my aim.
Well, because the arrival of there, it's peace.
Yeah.
When you can accept all of you and all that happened to you, and hold it without shame and guilt or anger. The other side is gratitude and peace and less mental tension.
Yeah.
It's a journey to get there,
Yeah.
but it's journey to Healing Island.
Yeah. The journey home.
Journey home.
Love you.
Love you too.